Good afternoon, everyone. Please come in and have a seat. And welcome to the last session of this conference. It's my great honor today and pleasure, and personal pleasure, to welcome to the Angel Conference Nanaia Mahuta. We are also pleased to have her here because she has been very active in New Zealand Parliament for decades. She has an impressive CV and an impressive personal and political experience. She was the first female minister for Maori development and foreign affairs. And she made a groundbreaking contribution to promote and champion traditional Maori culture and knowledge. In particular, she demonstrates how indigenous knowledge can address global challenges such as climate change, inequality, and also democratic citizenship. And this is the reason why we really wanted to have her here, and we are so honored to have her here today, explaining and sharing with us the global education and indigenous perspective toward citizenship. So please join me in a warm welcome to the Honorable Ms. Nanaia Mahuta.
Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hiake ana te ata kura he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Cease the winds from the north, cease the winds from the south, let the breeze blow over the land, let the breeze blow over the sea. Let the red-tipped dawn and the touch of frost bring the promise of a glorious day. It is the sacred breath of life, and in union I say, ti hei mauri ora. I open my speech with a sacred reference or offering, karakia, that connects the intent of my contribution to the shared purpose of our interaction, which is to reach deeply into the collective intent that we have to translate research, education, values, insight, wisdom, and knowledge into action. I've been nurtured in a community that has experienced challenge and adversity, but also one that has been seeded with hope and opportunity through the intergenerational muscle memory of resilience and perseverance to survive, thrive, and prosper. Can I thank Jean, Angel, BMZ, and the organising committee for the invitation to be here today. This presentation draws on the context of Aotearoa New Zealand to understand how Indigenous values and worldviews can contribute to revitalising citizenship, renewing democracy, and deepening our understanding of the importance of constitutional relationships to Indigenous peoples. This perspective, my perspective, is anchored in New Zealand's founding document, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which established rights and responsibilities between Māori and the Crown. By placing mātauranga Māori or traditional knowledge at the centre alongside enduring values such as whakapapa or connectedness, manaakitanga, reciprocity and care, and rangatiratanga, self-determination, my presentation highlights how Indigenous frameworks can guide us towards more inclusive, resilient, and ethical systems of governance. These frameworks do more than help address historical injustice. They offer a values-based blueprint to respond to today's most urgent challenges: rising inequality and poverty, the climate crisis, conflict, the erosion of democratic trust, and the search for meaningful economic reconciliation. The ongoing impact of colonisation as experienced by Māori is shared by other Indigenous peoples, including the First Peoples of America, Canada and Australia, to name a few, who engage in the global pursuit of social justice, economic reconciliation and models of self-determination. While the paths taken by Indigenous peoples vary, the pursuit itself is often rooted in shared cultural values, values that prioritise relational responsibilities, intergenerational well-being and the advancement of the collective. In elevating Indigenous insights and wisdom, I welcome those involved in research and policy spaces who consider the growing importance of the Indigenous perspective. There is an opportunity to embrace Indigenous knowledge to promote and shape a different future. In doing so, widely held norms are challenged as they were established at a time and place when codifying the international rule of law, advancing multilateralism, upholding human rights and abiding by rules-based trade relationships were tenets for international order. But we really need to ask ourselves, are they working as they were intended? What needs to change? And I don't believe now it's simply the politicians. I think it's more systemic than that. We gather at a time of unprecedented global disruption, significant uncertainty, conflict and crisis of one sort or another. And across every continent, we are witnessing the compounding impacts and effects of climate change, violent conflict, rising authoritarianism, and the steady erosion of democratic institutions. Again, I say structural inequality and poverty is pervasive and widespread, threatening future generations' ability to reach their full potential. And we have to care. We have to consider other perspectives. We have to connect with values that exercise our hearts and our minds to take action. The Sustainable Development Goals, once a shared vision for peace, justice and prosperity, are faltering and, dare I say, are in serious threat of significant backsliding. From Gaza to Ukraine, from flooded deltas in Bangladesh to atolls vanishing in the Pacific, these are not distant events. They are clear and present warnings, alongside many others, that our futures are deeply interwoven and that our current systems are not only fragile, but fundamentally unjust for far too many. This moment demands more than reflection. It demands courageous, values-based action. And it demands that we ask ourselves, whose knowledge are we listening to? Whose worldviews are shaping our response? I know our kids must be asking that in a world of technology, but surely we cannot continue to do the same thing because it will not deliver a different result. We have to make change real. So I ask, could Indigenous values, wisdom and perspectives offer a lens through which we could consider another way? At the heart of any lasting response lies education, and I know I'm talking to the converted here. Not simply as the transmission of knowledge, but as a catalyst for social justice, inclusion and belonging. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, kaupapa Māori education has demonstrated how learning systems grounded in te reo Māori, our Indigenous language, and ahurea Māori, our Māori culture, can affirm mana, a sense of self-authority, identity, connection, self-worth and dignity. Kura kaupapa Māori, Māori language immersion schools and wānanga tertiary institutions based on Māori pedagogy produce graduates who are confident in their culture, identity and engaged in the global community. These schools or places of learning do not see culture as a barrier to academic success, to success as a cultural advocate, but the values sit at the core foundation of how we learn and how we see ourselves contributing. The potentiality unleashed in this system is strongly grounded in Māori values as communal expressions of our society and the society we seek to create, one that seeks connection to the taiao, our environment, to each other, to one's place of belonging, and ultimately to serve a collective sense of what well-being means. Simply put, these values strive to assert belonging and connection and maintaining an emphasis on collective well-being and prosperity. To illustrate my point, our kids learn a song like this. He kaka noa hau, I ruia mai, I rangi a te a. For I will never be lost, I am a seed, born of greatness, descended from a line of chiefs. He kaka noa hau. You see the magic in that song from the time that a child is unknown to its mother in the womb. Songs like that are sung so that the true potentiality of all children can be realised through love. Likewise, across the Pacific, countries like Tokelau, Samoa and Tonga have embraced models of education that amplify local values, such as Whā Samoa, anga whakatonga, which emphasise familial responsibility, spiritual well-being and collective resilience. These frameworks teach that well-being is not individual, it's collective. It's a collective endeavour and it is shared. That success is not defined by rank or wealth, but by contribution and service to community. I'm fascinated by the cultural concept of wā in Samoan culture, and the closest reference point I can associate to it in Māori culture is mauri, which infers the enduring and sacred connection between all things. That connection is relational, it is sacred, it is guided by tikanga or ethical norms. This concept provides critical insights to Samoan culture and the values that guide interactions within that collective group. But when you see the culture in its full glory in terms of the practices and the traditions, you can only but be very much humbled by the way that they hold on to their cultural values. Such approaches challenge dominant assumptions about education and offer proven pathways to social cohesion, cultural survival, and democratic participation. In my view, Aotearoa has a unique opportunity and responsibility to share our outlook on how our constitutional document, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, underpins and informs the basis for responsible governance, and that helps to define our democratic context. Signed in 1840 between Māori and the British Crown, the treaty affirms principles of partnership, mutual respect and shared decision-making. Now, I don't want rose-tinted glasses to be expressed in relation to this. We've had our ups and downs, and there have been many. But we continue to progress towards the partnership that was originally intended. So the treaty is not just a historical document, it is a living model for relational governance. A relational model that informs the pillars of democracy, resets the whole notion of participatory democracy and what that means post-colonisation as we build social and economic models of inclusion. So let me take a moment to draw from our local context. At home, the Waitangi Tribunal, which was founded in 1975, whose remit changed in about 1985, was established to consider the actions of the Crown in relation to its responsibility to uphold the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. The relational basis for the rights and responsibility ascribed between Māori and the Crown is expressed in that document. So you see, the Waitangi Tribunal provides for a thorough investigation of the legal, socio-political obligations of the Crown to Māori. And although its powers are not legally binding, over time, the recommendations of the Tribunal have shaped and influenced public policy in areas not limited to, but including language revitalisation, education, health, resolving historical injustices, and also the validity and robustness of trade agreements. By way of an aside, Māori are currently challenging the Crown's stance on social housing policy, which is a cornerstone to addressing structural poverty. The point should not be lost that in New Zealand, the current coalition government is attempting to reverse the long-standing conventions of Te Tiriti o Waitangi jurisprudence and public policy that has been shaped over the past 185 years. I consider this a political misstep, a blip. Of course, I was a member of the former government, and I would say that, but I believe that, because in the colloquial vernacular, in reference to the actions of this current coalition government, it's just hoha, a waste of time. By and large, New Zealanders are fair-minded, and what we are experiencing right now resembles links to what we observe in other democracies, being far-right ideology, splitting over into democratic institutions, promoting individualism and divisive ethos. Advocating for an Indigenous values-based approach to this challenge is a conscious act of reclamation, restoring the relational fabric of our country grounded in the principles that bind all people and communities together under a common and shared purpose. Nobody benefits when division thrives. While the debate about the place of Te Tiriti o Waitangi is animated and politically charged, it has served to mobilise a significant proportion again of fair-minded New Zealanders who refuse to reverse the clock and go backwards. Instead, there are more people engaged in the discourse that we must continue to secure the hard-fought gains that have shaped who we have become as a nation. Aotearoa New Zealand, a small country in the Pacific, in and of the Pacific. And importantly, as we do that, we continue to promote an Indigenous perspective as our contribution towards the global effort of shaping global citizenship. In lifting up to an international example, when linking Indigenous values to constitutional rights, we look towards the practical implementation of the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP. There is a widely held view amongst Indigenous peoples that nation states should take solid steps towards implementing UNDRIP. And by doing so, it's possible to move beyond colonisation, beyond capitalism, beyond inequality and poverty, and toward economic and social reconciliation, where the goal is intergenerational well-being, peace and prosperity for all our people and the planet. In a world where multilateralism is faltering and where institutions like the UN Security Council are paralysed by the P5 right of veto, we have to imagine new models of governance, ones that empower small states, Indigenous peoples and marginalised communities to shape a future where people, prosperity, planet and people create durable models for well-being. Towards a shared humanity of an integrated and connected whole. This, I believe, is not a distant possibility in the Indigenous mindset. It is a mission objective not limited by space, time, or place. Indigenous diplomacy is not about domination, it is about connection. And I'll try to explain that drawing on Māori cultural values. You see, whanaungatanga is an expression of our sense of well-being and connection within families, across communities, and at a macro level between nation states, those with shared values. In the Pacific, whanaungatanga shapes the exchange of peoples through a culturally grounded series of interactions. Once this expression of cultural exchange is recognised, the potential for alliance, collaboration, or long-term partnership can emerge. It is a relational approach to finding common ground. And this perspective offers insight into Indigenous practices in the Pacific, guided by trade and exchange, relationship connection, whakapapa whanaungatanga. Today, several Indigenous researchers are exploring how a return to these Indigenous practices could inform and transform economic engagements amongst Indigenous economies, including the Pacific. Indigenous economics and economic reconciliation are emerging aspirations that challenge the current model of capitalism, which I might add has failed Indigenous peoples. Indigenous economies seek to restore a model of prosperity and abundance where well-being, not wealth accumulation, lies at the heart of a caring economy. Across the Indigenous world, knowledge is not stored in textbooks. It is carried in stories passed down through each generation, through storytelling, through artwork, practices associated with food and the environment, songs, rituals, knowledge of nature and astronomy, oral histories. The transmission of knowledge is a key ingredient within a village, whānau or community that reinforces identity, connection and values. I'm sure we would all agree that it takes a village to raise a child. We say that enough times. And we need to reinstate the village as a means to ensure that our common and shared values build towards our shared aspiration of peace, care for each other, care for our people, and care for our taiao, our planet. Kaitiakitanga teaches that humans are not masters of the earth. We are a part of an interconnected web of life or ecosystem, a biodiverse ecosystem, with a responsibility to protect that which sustains us. This concept aligns with Indigenous values globally, and it presents a fundamentally different logic to that of extractive capitalism and instead defends integrative naturism. And here's the thing, we teach this to our kids, again, through song or through relating to the taiao. We are a part of it. We're not doing things to the taiao, we are part of the taiao. And to illustrate my point, another waiata. Te marama, te rangi e, tohu mai ngā whetu, hei arata ki e, hei whai huarahi ki te mata o te whenua, te aho mai ngā whetu, te aho mai te marama. That's just one of many songs that we use to teach young people to observe the taiao, observe the stars, observe the seasons. And when the time is right, there is a time for everything. And what's so special about that is that the noise of the world that they are in, technology, all the things that they're challenged with, it centres them to locate themselves in time and space and place with the knowledge of their ancestors and navigate their way through any challenge. So you see, by extension, the climate crisis is not a future threat, it is a catastrophe. And if we don't take heed of the signs and the symbols and making that real for our children, things will happen to them and they will feel without any control at all. But let me look across the Pacific, because in the Pacific, communities in Fiji and Tonga, for example, have already begun relocating their people due to rising sea levels. And these are not policy debates, these are actions that communities are taking because the threat is real. These are families moving homes, graves and histories. And across the Pacific, change is being led from the ground up. They're not waiting for government policies. They know they're watching the signs. They believe they have to act, and act they do. And I think about movements like the Pacific Climate Warriors and the Samoan Victim Support Group, which are led by young people, by women and by Indigenous communities. And similarly, in Kiribati, the Te Mauri Declaration integrates local spirituality and ancestral obligations into national climate action. And the type of activities that are being undertaken in the Pacific is quite humbling. Believe you me, I had the opportunity to visit many of these community-led actions in response to climate change and witness the leadership coming through from young people. And here's the thing, they're not waiting for policy. They're reading the signs, they know what's coming, and they are making change happen. In New Zealand, we have similar activities, but for the brevity of time, and I know that there's an opportunity for you to ask me questions, let me just say that the next generation of leadership coming through from Indigenous communities by Māori from the Pacific are not waiting for permission. They are asserting a future shaped by the values that they have been grown in and for this time. Because as things become more and more complicated and complex, perhaps that's why going back to a values-based system, going back to Indigenous values, provides a rudder to steer our waka through these difficult times. So I've set out a range of discussion points that demonstrate how the Aotearoa New Zealand context of understanding a values-based approach connects to similar approaches across the Pacific and with other Indigenous peoples through education and strengthening governance and democracy, achieving social justice, economic reconciliation, affirming resilience against the backdrop of a climate crisis. We gain perspective of the potential for systemic transformation by recognising Indigenous values. We have to move beyond existing and limiting frameworks that make space for the wisdom of those who have long practiced connectedness, interdependence, reciprocity, resilience, generosity of spirit. The transmission of this wisdom through lived practices, intergenerational memory and the village context matters now more than ever before. That's certainly what I'm telling my children. Indigenous values here, I would assert, for too long sat on the margins of democratic institutions, yet those values are no longer marginal. They are key to the future we seek for our children and our grandchildren. They are essential. They offer the tools that we need to foster global citizenship, strengthen democracy, and rebuild trust in each other as neighbours and in our shared future as citizens, global citizens. But building another table to include Indigenous values requires a deliberate and intentional set of steps. A courageous attempt to extend knowledge systems and draw on timeless wisdom to simply ask, is there another way? Is there another way? I've dedicated myself to building the proposition for a future envisaged by my ancestor, that his mokopuna will live peacefully, sustainably, confidently in this world, knowing exactly who they are, where they belong, why they contribute, and what their oranga or well-being proposition looks like in an ever-changing world, and how they can reach their hand out and hold someone else's and say, let's go together. My ancestor, that ancestor was Tāwhiao, and he said, "Mā kua no e hanga I tōku nei whare. Ko ngā paupau, he mahoi, he patete, ko te tāhuhu, he hīnau. Me whakatupu ki te hua o te ringaringa, me whakapakari ki te hua o te kawariki, ka puta, ka ora. I, my mokopuna, my grandchild, I'll fashion my own house for us all. And we will source those posts from the great forests. And they will be mahoi and patete. And the great ridgepole of our whare will be hino. And we'll sustain ourselves and nourish ourselves on the great forest with the ringa and the kawariki. And we will prosper and flourish. We will prosper and we will flourish. There's so much that could be said in that whakatauki or saying, that prophetic saying. But for the purposes of this speech, what it says is that if we draw from our traditional knowledge, our ancestral knowledge, and the wisdom contained in it, even in contemporary times, there are applicable metaphors that can help us navigate our way forward. So as agents committed to change for the common and collective good, there is no choice, we must act. Intentionally and with purpose, and I do believe that time is now. Kia mau ki te tika, ki te whakapono me te aroha, hei aha te ara, hold fast to truth, hold fast to faith, hold fast to love, and above all else, hold fast to love. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, riri hau, pai mariri.
E paki a kia rite,
Ko te rite, kia rite,
e takahia kia ngā wari e,
toro no kei waho hoki mai.
hoki mai.
E whakarongo mai rā, ki te tangi nei, a te manue, a te taraki ki te weheruatanga o te po. Arara takita kita, arara takita kita. Wiri o papa to ene to ene. Wiri o papa to ene to ene.
Turi whatia, hope whaiake, karupukana, hei, hei, hei ha.
Now, that's my husband there. You would have known. You would have noticed I was looking at him a little bit strangely because I already told him, don't do my song, I've already got it sorted. And then he had to do it. But thank you. And thank you for the time. I know that we've got maybe a moment or so for questions. So I'm happy to take questions. And if there's none, you get another song.
So thank you very much for your really inspiring words. That was really, very important for us, for our discussion, for our reflection. We have time for question or comment if you are from the audience. We have 10 minutes. Let me say something first. Okay, go on, please.
Can we start with the song?
You're from the song.
Or maybe end with the song.
There you.
No, well, we keep time for the song, definitely. Yeah, because let me interpret a little bit this condition. This is my personal feeling. I would like to share my personal feeling, and I believe that most of the people here in the room share my personal feeling. Being a European, a person from the global north, listen to your voice, to your words, and with a great respect and the awareness that is for us, for me, as a European, it's time to be silent. To be silent and to leave room for voices, for other voices, and just listen to. We have spoken too much in our past, in our history. We have great responsibility. It's now time to be silent and listen and enjoy your work.
Yes, I agree with that. But let's not grow a generation of apologists for history that we've experienced. And the only way that we can sit around the table and provide space for voice, but also truth tell in ways that we can reconcile the future we want to see, is by making room for diversity, and many have spoken to that today, by being able to see complex challenges through a broader lens, and we've heard that through presentations today, by being able to contest ideas in order to figure out what is the future that we share a collective vision for, so that we might hold hands and walk down that path, and I've heard that today. So I would hope, and I'll speak from the New Zealand context, because we have a very contested view about what New Zealand looks like at the moment. And, you know, I've been in politics for 27 years formally. You can never take the politician out of the person, even though they've left politics. But what I would say, which I referred to in my speech, is that New Zealanders by and large are fair-minded. We all want the same things. We want all our children to live with the freedom of choice, where there is no poverty and inequality, where we have strong values that cement the texture of our society, and we are becoming very diverse. And to achieve that, we have to make space. We have to listen. We have to contest ideas and not criticise people, hopefully, along the way. You know, we have to understand that there could be different ways of finding solutions to complex challenges. So, you know, I hold that perspective because I was given the great privilege to serve for a number of years, but I also got to travel a lot. And my parents believed always from the time we were born that travel is a great teacher and it gives you perspective. And in fact, the more you find out about the world, the more humble you become. And I say that in this place and what it represents, but also with the experience that I've come from New Zealand. So you've given me a lot to think about in the presentations. I want to acknowledge all the panellists and the other keynote speakers who I understand were as probably more riveting than I. But, you know, forums like this allow us to speak to areas of common interest. But what I know from being a politician, and perhaps I'm not speaking out of turn in terms of how you've experienced politics, we need to influence at all levels. And quite frankly, if the leadership is not going down that pathway, it's just a harder push. You're pushing uphill. It's not to say you're going in the wrong direction, but you are pushing uphill. We need graduated, sustained education of the leadership that's coming through, but also the advocacy to impact on the policy and the regulatory settings within each of our nation states. That's enough from me. Here's the song I was going to sing. He just can't help himself wanting to help me. Okay, this is a song I really love, and it simply depicts what we teach all our young people, and these are New Zealanders now as well. In order to locate yourself, you share a little bit of who you are, where you come from, your mountains, your oceans, the lands that you belong to, your connection. Ko mana tōku maunga, ko aroha te moana, ko whānau tōku waka, ko au e tu atu nei. Aha kua pāmamao, kei konei koe, ka maumahara mai rā, no konei koe. Mana is my mountain, love is my sea, family is my canoe, and all of that is me. Although you're far away, I'll hold you near. I'll keep the home fires burning so you can see clear. Ko mana tōku maunga, ko aroha te moana, ko whānau tōku waka, ko au e tu atu nei. Ko au e tu atu nei. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Thank you very much.
Tēnei tui, tēnei. Nei tanana tēnei tahano te tupua. Whitia hapai ngia ko rangi nui e tui honei ko papatūnu ko e takoto nei ki te tangata e pai nei ko tai mai tātou. Rengia hou. Tūturu whakawhiti whakamaua kia tīna. Tīna. Haumi e, hui e.
Tai ki. And just by way of explanation, in my culture, when you come and share with a specific purpose and with intent, and you invoke the wisdom of your ancestors, you clear the way before you start, and then you clear the way after you leave, in order to ensure that people leave enlightened and full. Kia ora.